Well, good morning, good evening, or good afternoon, whatever your current live situation is. Hello, YouTube. It's Racicot back again with another episode of Kites Curiosities. Excuse me. Gonna do a book review today. This is a book done by my friend and fellow YouTuber Henry L. Racicot. Title of this book is called Broken Crown. Broken Crown. On the back here, it says Henry L. Racicot's novel Broken Crown completes the work he began with the short story collections Holy Days in the Sun and The Unbearable Ugliness of Being. In these lived-in pages, human experience is distilled by a narrator, retired from the conventions of everyday life, recalling a restless upbringing, dysfunctional relationships, and pointless labor. The narrator concludes depression is a healthy reaction to the way of the world. Spiked with dark humor, this is the confession of failure told by a human being who tried. I tried most of the time. So that's a little bit of insight from the back cover of this book. Let me set it back up here. And let's get into this book review. I got this book for Christmas. My family got it for me. And I read it, started reading on it Christmas Day, actually, and finished it up maybe Monday or Tuesday of this week. Today is Saturday, January the 3rd. So I finished it up maybe Tuesday, Wednesday of this week. And on his YouTube channel, Hank here, he goes by Hank Racicot. Hank, he says, when he's promoting his own book, he says, this book is for, if you're a big boy or big girl, this book might be good for you. But if you're easily offended, this book may not be for you. To dive into that, this book can offend a lot of people. It can be offensive if you don't like some harsh language that is used periodically. There's some heavy topics in this book that has some deep thoughts that challenge different societal norms, customs, belief systems, and things like that. So it can offend you. Something that I've kind of developed in my own thinking. I think people are offended a lot of times because what's being said brings out or reminds them of some ugly truths about their lives. I think that's where a lot of this offensive cancel culture comes from. Even me, I have some things about me that I try to work on, and they come out, make bad decisions, make poor decisions, and it's just like, I got to suffer the consequences that comes along with them. So when different truths are brought out about me that I don't like to hear, I have to stop and question myself. Okay, why am I offended by these words? Whatever they may be. I personally was not offended by anything in this book, but it is a heavy book now. And it is a book that causes you to really think about things. Causes you to examine yourself, take an inventory of, where you are in life and how you got there, as opposed to how the narrator got there. And that's the main character of this book. I call him the narrator. How the narrator got to his point in life through different decision-making processes. This book is written as a memoir. I think on page 137, the author, Hank, he talks about it as being a memoir, but I don't know if this is a confessional memoir or a thematic memoir, or if this memoir is from his actual life, or if the narrator is a creation, a created story, or he's taking bits and pieces from, his own imagination that he came up with, or what. But the two different types of memoirs you can have a confessional memoir, which is like a deeply personal memoir that covers things that the author might be ashamed of, or taboo subject matter that's difficult to talk about. And a confessional memoir will explore all the emotions and the aftermath of certain decisions, and possibly even some indecisions that the author has made in his or her life. So that's what a confessional memoir is. A thematic memoir is based on just one main idea or theme. And it takes various moments in the author's life and deeply explores that one main idea or theme at various moments in time in the author's life, and how the author grows and matures during each of those specific moments in time. So that's what a thematic memoir is. I'm not real sure what type of memoir this is. Some parts of it seem confessional, and some parts of it seem thematic. So you would have to read it and come up with your own conclusion on that. In my opinion, this is this book is a type of therapy for Hank here. I think it's a type of therapy for him. Typically, people can express themselves and get things out through the writing process. And this book, it reminded me of the writing style. It reminded me of two specific authors that I read when I was in college. One is John Updike. John Updike, wonderful author. He wrote many short stories. I think he wrote some novels. And his characters usually center around someone who is faced with a decision. They're faced with certain decisions. They got to make a decision to either do or not do something. And the character makes that decision, but it leads to all kinds of calamity. And just, just like things don't turn out the way the character thinks it's going to turn out, or hopes to turn out. This book reminds me of those Updike stories that are written like that. The one that I can remember specifically from my Reinhardt reader in college was a story called A&P by John Updike. And it's basically about a young man in a grocery store who defends the honor of these three girls, and his decision results in just calamity, and it doesn't come out the way he envisioned it happening. And so that's a theme that runs deep in this book here. And another author that I read in college, a guy named Franz Kafka, it's either Kafka or Kafka, Kafka. He wrote a novel called The Trial, which is about a guy who is accused of a crime. He's never informed of what crime it is he's committed, but he's just arrested, put on trial, and he has to defend himself. But the trial is clearly rigged, and he has to fight through that adversity to, prove his innocence. But Franz Kafka, he writes stories that have characters, like I just talked about, characters that are embroiled in these bizarre circumstances. And because the situations are always controlled by these outside governing forces, the character has to fight through all kinds of disadvantages to achieve the outcome that he or she's hoping to achieve. So I thought about that when I was going through this book. So if you like those two authors, I think this would be a pretty good read for you. Now, the narrator in this story basically struggles with two, in my opinion, very basic main ideas or ideologies that we all experience in our lives, and that's selfishness and an emptiness, or an empty existence, like an emptiness of life. So as far as selfishness goes, I could talk for hours about all the selfish choices I've made and continue to make in this life. And, that's human nature. We get caught up in selfishness. We try not to be selfish, but we find ourselves periodically in those moments. And so I was able to connect with the narrator in the story through that principle. The other one is the empty existence. I've never talked about this before on this channel, so I'll talk about it a little bit. I was a probation officer for 15 years. I did 3 years as a felony probation officer and 12 years after that as a misdemeanor probation officer. And looking back, I left that job, and now I'm a school teacher. That's a whole nother story for a whole nother time, maybe. But looking back, for me, that job had absolutely no purpose. There was no sense of completion, no sense of accomplishment. It was seeing the same people over and over and over with excuse after excuse after excuse about why they could not complete their probation and abide by their probation conditions. And again, looking back on that point in my life, I felt very dead inside. There was just, I was depressed. I had a sense of hopelessness. I had issues with, coworkers who bullied me in different aspects of the job. And then when I, fought back and tried to, stand up for myself, I was punished for doing so. Maybe because I did it the wrong way. I don't know. And to really, it doesn't matter, because I've moved on and I've resolved that situation in my life and just kind of moved on. So, but the narrator says in this book over and over and over that he feels dead inside. And I connected with the narrator on that because I've had moments like that in my life. And the narrator comes to the conclusion that environment has a lot to do with that dead feeling on the inside. And I can't help but agree with that. If you are in an environment that is absolutely discouraging, that does not reward effort, does not offer anything other than just, more added on to your plate, it can leave you feeling absolutely dead inside. Oh, well, you can do this? Well, let's give you something else to do. Oh, you proved you can do that? Let's add another thing, and then another, and another, and another. And, let's just see how much work we can get out of you for as little money possible to pay you. So, and anyway, money's not everything, but it does help with a lot of different things. So, for that, I connected with the main character in in this book too. Something that I can't figure out though is if my buddy Hank here, if Racicot was trying to have the narrator face his life and face the life that he's lived through existential realism or the purposeful universe. Now I don't want to just leave y'all hanging here. Let me explain y'all what existential realism is. Existential realism is a philosophy that concentrates on how existence differs from reality. So existence is just the concerning with the here and now. What's going on right here, right now, at the present moment. And reality, and that's what makes existence real. Reality is real, but it's different from existence because reality focuses on past events and future possibilities. And it's only real because these past events and future possibilities have an effect on the present human condition. And to me, that makes kind of sense. The narrator finds himself, he's concerned with what's going on right now, what's present in his life, but then he looks back on the past, and then he imagines some things in the future. So, I kind of, it's kind of flip-flops between flashbacks and doing other things, but that was kind of neat to see. But then you have the purposeful universe. Now, the purposeful universe is a philosophy that explores whether or not existence has a goal or an end destination. And it begs the question, is there a middle ground between divine creation and atheistic materialism? To me, I don't want to get into my thoughts on that. I can maybe in a later video go into my feelings on that, but the narrator explores those things in his mindset. He begins to question, is there a purpose for all this existence? Does the universe have a purpose? Do people have a purpose? Or is it just merely, work as hard as you can, go to school, get a good job, do as much as you can to acquire as much material wealth as you can before you leave this earth? And so he wrestles with that. The narrator wrestles with that back and forth. And so he probably, if I go back and read this again, he probably flip-flops between existential realism and the purposeful universe. But we all constantly do that. We bounce between what if. Should I do this? Should I not do this? What is my purpose? And in the end, the narrator comes to the conclusion, which I want to share this. Hopefully this isn't a spoiler. Hopefully this doesn't spoil the book, but the narrator finds himself at a point in life where he starts to look at the Bible and eventually finds what appears to be the answer to his questions about the universe. Seek ye first the kingdom of God and his righteousness, and all these things shall be added unto you. So, you can't just take that verse and just kind of you got to know what happened before then. But before Jesus said that, and this verse is found in Matthew chapter 6, verse 33. But before that, Jesus begins to tell the people he's talking to, he says, basically God takes care of the flowers in the field. He takes care of the birds in the air. And neither one of them work a job. Neither one of them store up things in a warehouse. Neither one of them, build 401ks and, all of these things and various things that we're taught by society. Oh, that's important. That's what you should do. And they are. They are important, but should that be our focus? And the narrator figures out, through that verse and through that Bible story, he figures out the answer to all of these questions that he's had for all these years. So that's my take on this book. If you like to think, if you like to read stories and think and ponder things, this right here, this is a wonderful, wonderful book, and I encourage you to read it. But it is for mature audiences. It is for a mature person. So that's it. If you've read this book, tell me what you think down in the comments. And also tell me if you are pondering and thinking about getting this book right here. As always, folks, like, comment, subscribe, do whatever you want to do. Till next time, y'all take care. Now, have a good one. Bye.